Artificial intelligence is often described as a tool, a neutral technology, a system that simply responds to whoever programs it. This framing is comforting. It suggests control is straightforward and visible. But artificial intelligence is not governed by code alone. It is governed by structures, by institutions, by access, and ultimately by authority. When people ask who controls AI, they usually look in the wrong place. They focus on developers, on companies, on consumer-facing products, on interfaces they can see and touch. But control does not reside at the interface. It resides beneath it, in the layers that determine what can be built, what can be trained, and what can be deployed in the first place. The first and most fundamental layer of control is infrastructure. Without massive computational power, advanced AI systems cannot exist. High-performance data centers, specialized chips, cloud architectures, and energy-intensive systems are prerequisites. These resources are not evenly distributed. They are scarce, they are centralized, and they are owned. Ownership of computation is the first gate. Institutions that control large-scale compute decide who can experiment at the frontier and who cannot. They decide which models can be trained at scale and which ideas remain theoretical. This alone filters the future of artificial intelligence long before public debate begins. Access to computation is not open. It is governed through contracts, pricing structures, partnerships, and security requirements. In some cases, access requires regulatory approval or national security clearance. Institutions that control infrastructure quietly determine which actors can participate in advanced AI development and which are excluded. The second layer of control is data. Artificial intelligence does not learn from intelligence. It learns from exposure. From massive data sets reflecting behavior, communication, movement, consumption, and decision-making. Data is the raw material of machine learning. The most valuable data sets are not public. They are institutional. Governments, intelligence agencies, financial institutions, telecom operators, and major platforms collect data at a scale unmatched by individuals, researchers, or startups. Control over data determines what AI can see, and what it cannot see determines what it can never learn. Data access is governed quietly and systematically through legal frameworks, through proprietary systems, through classification regimes, and through national security exemptions. These mechanisms decide whose reality becomes machine knowledge and whose remains invisible. The third layer of control is funding. Advanced AI development is expensive. Training frontier models requires sustained capital, specialized talent, and long-time horizons. Public funding is visible and debated. Classified funding is not. Yet classified funding often shapes the most advanced and most influential systems. As examined in earlier briefings, black budgets finance AI development outside public oversight. This funding does not follow market logic. It follows strategic logic. Systems are built not because they promise short-term profit, but because they offer long-term advantage. Institutions allocating classified AI funding do not disclose objectives. They do not publish benchmarks. They do not invite peer review. Their priorities quietly steer the direction of AI development, often permanently. The fourth layer of control is deployment authority. Not all AI systems are released as consumer products. Many are deployed internally. Others are integrated into intelligence analysis, military planning, financial forecasting, logistics optimization, and behavioral modeling. These deployments are invisible to the public, but decisive in outcome. Where an AI system is deployed matters more than how it is marketed. A recommendation system influences consumption. A forecasting system influences markets. An intelligence system influences geopolitics. The same technology produces entirely different forms of power, depending on its point of application. The fifth layer is governance. Public AI governance debates focus on ethics, bias, safety, and transparency. These discussions matter, but they largely address surface systems. They rarely touch classified or strategic AI environments. Classified AI systems are exempt from civilian regulation. They do not participate in transparency initiatives. They are not subject to international accords. Their governance is internal, closed, and oriented toward strategic utility rather than public accountability. This creates a split reality. One AI ecosystem is public, debated, regulated, and slowed by process. The other is classified, accelerated, and shielded from scrutiny. Control resides primarily in the second ecosystem. Private corporations play an important role, but their power is often misunderstood. Corporations control products, platforms, and interfaces, but their autonomy is constrained by access to infrastructure, data, funding, and regulatory approval. Large technology firms operate within boundaries defined by states. They negotiate access to resources. They comply with national security requirements. Their most advanced collaborations often occur behind closed doors, far from public visibility. This does not mean corporations are weak. It means their power is conditional. Ultimate control over AI emerges where corporate capability intersects with state authority. This intersection forms what can be called the algorithmic governance layer, a space where decisions about AI are made without public participation, where priorities are defined institutionally, and where accountability is minimal or non-existent. The consequences are profound. AI systems increasingly shape decisions before humans are aware of them. They influence assessments, optimize strategies, filter information, and recommend actions at scale. Control over AI, therefore, becomes control over perception, prediction, and response. Power shifts away from visible decision-making and toward invisible optimization. This shift is not accidental. It reflects the incentives of modern power. Systems that operate quietly face less resistance. Systems that optimize faster outpace governance. Systems that scale invisibly accumulate influence without confrontation. Understanding who controls AI requires abandoning simple narratives. It is not merely a competition between companies. It is not simply a race between nations. It is a layered architecture of control. Infrastructure owners, data custodians, funding authorities, deployment managers, governance architects. Each layer narrows access. Each layer concentrates power, and each layer operates largely outside public awareness. In previous briefings, we traced how AI is funded and administered. This briefing clarifies who controls it. Control is not singular. It is systemic. As artificial intelligence becomes embedded in security, finance, and governance, this control architecture will shape outcomes regardless of public debate or popular opinion. Understanding this structure is essential because AI will not be governed by those who discuss it publicly. It will be governed by those who control its foundations. Analysis complete. In the next restricted briefing, we will examine the AI governance networks no one voted for and how algorithmic authority increasingly replaces democratic input. Subscribe to Dark Power Index to access the next restricted briefing file. Access the data.